Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Making a Difference in Mental Health. I'm Danielle, and I am on location. Wendy, you're in the studio. Hey, Wendy.
Yes, good morning. Hi, everyone. I'm in the studio in our ABH podcast studio. So I'm really excited about today, Danielle.
Yes, today we have a very interesting episode, and we are joined by our illustrious colleagues from our DEIB committee. But we're here today to talk about what therapists really want parents to know. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. Hopefully it's insightful, hopefully it's educational, and hopefully we can be real and be honest about what we really want parents to know when it comes to therapy, therapeutic mentoring, and just helping our kids get back on the path of functionality. So before we begin, can everyone just kind of introduce themselves and let us know what position you play at ABH?
Sure, I'll start. My name's Lindsay Allardyce. I am an LMSW. I'm a therapist with at our Gaithersburg, Montgomery County location.
I'm Bree Patino. I'm an LGPC. I'm a counselor, and I'm a therapist at Greenbelt as well as a member of the DEI committee.
Yeah, I'm Nikki Donboli. I'm LMSW therapist. I'm based in the community schools program and the Greenbelt office, and I am also a member of the DEIB committee.
I'm Miguel Nolasco, and I'm also a therapeutic mentor here at Greenbelt and the Montgomery County office. I've been doing it for over 5 years, and I'm based out in that community.
All right, everyone. So we are going to begin the conversation. I'm just going to throw a question out there. What do you all want parents to know?
So I'll interject, Danielle.
Okay.
So that for me, it's all about messaging. Working in child welfare, it's all about child maltreatment, and we used to preach words matter, and so we would try to teach our parents to be more positive with their words, be more encouraging with their words, instead of always coming from a negative space and criticizing and critiquing their children. And so to me, it's messaging. If you can't get the messaging right, then you can't help solve the problem. And, at ABH, we are very family oriented. We work with children and families. So do a lot of family therapy, and the discussion around messaging, to me, is huge. And it can make or break a child. It's very impactful. And, getting people to really kind of learn something different is a challenge that I actually like.
Yeah, I completely, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, Gretchen, for people who might not know what you mean by messaging, could you expand a little bit on what that means for mental health clinicians?
Right. So messaging is really simple. It's just, taking the time to give positive affirmations, and focusing on when your kid does something good and saying to them, "Oh, I'm so proud of you. You did really well with an activity." Or encouraging. I know today's a hard test. You're going to knock it out the block. You studied really hard. I'm with you all the day. Things like that that are encouraging. That's the messaging, as opposed to always looking at something, negative that your child does. I watched a video one time on TikTok, and they were talking about throughout the entire day, I think a kid hears somewhere around no 400 times, and it's just it's so negative, and it weighs on children. So if parents could just reverse and think of positive things they can say to their children every day, and not so much the negative, it would really impact the behavior. So that's what I mean by messaging.
Yeah, I completely agree. I ran into something like this just a couple of weeks ago in a family session. That was a real big sticking point between the daughter and the mom were having a really, really difficult time with their relationship. And the daughter was feeling like she was in some ways disliked by her mom. And, and she brought up this instance this type of thing that happened frequently. And, when her mom would get really frustrated, mom would say when I get so frustrated, I don't want to start a fight. I don't want to yell at her. So the mom would tell her to just go, just get out of here, leave the room, just go, get out. And the intention there was amazing. The intention was the mom needed a minute to calm down so she didn't yell at her kid. So she was asking the kid to leave. it was coming across as like to the kid saying like, get out of my sight, I don't want to see you, and which is a really hard thing for the kid to hear. And so by turning that message around just a little bit, saying, instead of the mom's telling the kid to get out, mom's saying, hey, I need a minute to calm down, I'm gonna go to my room and take a breath, let's check back in 5 minutes. Exact same behavior, exact same intention, but then the kid is getting modeled that like this great coping skill of like taking a minute before she says something she regrets, and knows that it's just that the mom's frustrated with the situation, not that, you know, the kid is somehow at fault here, or and that little twist in the words that she used was so important. And you know, it was really powerful for the daughter to kind of hear from the mom that it wasn't that she just wanted the kid to get out of her sight, you know, that she wasn't the source of the frustration.
And that's what we call reframing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of happens a lot with teens is what I was going to add. And, you know, we teach our teens to, you know, take a breath, pause before you react. And, you know, parents have to do the same, because when you're in the heat of the moment, you know, words really do matter, and they can be very, very hurtful. So when everybody takes a pause, come back to it and then talk about it. So yes, that's reframing the whole situation, learning a different way to communicate.
I think Lindsay's point brings me to like one of the main like things that I have noticed like cause conflict within parent and child, and it has to do with like the power dynamics. So I feel like for a lot of parents, they feel like to maintain their like position of authority or like power, they almost like don't communicate certain things with their kids, you know, kind of like the example of what you're saying, Lindsay, where she's just like, just go away, because to them it's like, my child doesn't need to understand exactly what I'm going through, or maybe it's like a moment of weakness if I do need space and I'm not okay right now. And instead of like modeling those healthy coping mechanisms, they just like create these barriers and push the child away, or like avoid communication to, you know, to keep their power, as you know, they think that they're doing. And I feel like it's really important for parents to understand like how difficult it is to be like young and like at the will of a different person, you know, and feeling so powerless, which I feel like creates a lot of like oppositional behavior, you know, like kids rebelling, kids not wanting to follow rules, or, you know, kids doing things against their parents' backs because they feel very powerless. So this is like their ways of them gaining control. And I feel like if parents viewed it as like a team, you know, like we're a team and we're working towards this together, and we can talk about what your punishment is, you know, like what do you think is the appropriate thing, or this is why I'm, you know, putting this rule in place, like because of your well-being, and, you know, like explaining those things. I think parents underestimate how big of a difference it makes, and how much it will be easier to maintain that like authority because they trust you. And it's not just like a respect and fear thing, but it's also like, oh, my mom, you know, she does think things through. She does want what's best for me. She, you know, she explains why this is the rule, and I can trust that she's making the best decisions, and it's going to be easier for them to like listen to you. Yeah.
I completely agree. And I think that that's the difference when you see a parent who's like a confident leader of like their kid and like their team with their kids, as opposed to a parent who is, you know, trying to hold on to control, or wanting their kid to obey them for the sake of obeying, as opposed to understanding and, you know, like leading them to the right decision by showing them how, you know, it made sense to get there, right? Like, like you said, like demonstrating that, like giving the kid the understanding of the why these rules are in place is so important, and they're going to want to follow them a lot more than it because I said so.
Right.
And something I
So-
always
Go ahead, Nikki.
something that I often like have to explain to parents, especially for, you know, when they have kids that are like maybe like 11, 12 years old, is that developmentally, the way you talk to your children is different. Like, you know, whether your kid is 4 years old or 11 or 12 years old, you know, with maybe a 4 or 5 year old, you can tell them, you know, yeah, like you got to do what I say because I said so and whatnot. But then when kids get older, developmentally, they're better able to reason. They have like better abstract thinking. So they're going to naturally want to question things, and they're not going to be satisfied with the same, oh, because I told you so. So And in order to really like nourish that development and like their developed thinking, parents really should, like, as they become older, really change how they talk to their kids. One of the biggest things that I notice is, parents will talk to their teens as if they're, like 6, 7 years old again, and maybe forget that, as the child grows older, the way they need to talk to that child also changes.
Okay.
I mean, it's good to know that one size does not fit all,
Yeah.
right? That's basically what we're saying. All kids are different. They're different at different developmental stages. Therefore, you have to kind of shift and finesse your parenting to match where they are developmentally.
Yeah, and I kind of like just want to like piggyback off Nikki just a little bit. She mentioned a really key point, which is communication, the way we communicate with our kids, whether they're 5 years old or 16 years old or 18 years old. Working, I mean, I work with like adults, kids, you name it. So I have seen that translation, what it takes in order to, like build like a healthy relationship with them. And, I have had clients that, they've been with me since they were in middle school, now they're high school, and I can see how communication plays a huge role. And I want to say, I mean, it's not easy. Parenting is not easy. Parenting is tough, and no one gets it perfect. So we understand that through generation things are changing still. But what matters most is being present and open and learning along your child. That's what matters. I think another key point is in terms of communicating is often it's important to model like a healthy emotional regulation. I think, I mean, with younger kids, you're seeing it now more. Kids are watching how we handle how everything, stress, anger, disappointment, and they kind of learn from our behaviors along the way, even more than our words. They're like modeling everything we do, and I have seen it because um, I have a client. He's a middle schooler. Have been having it since he was at elementary school, and all his behavior is pattern of like his mom, basically. So it's not about being perfect, by showing them how to handle challenges with resilience, and they can really learn that, and as they grow up, you can really start to see how they react to it, right? Um, just to end the communication is everything. Communication is everything. How open you are with your kids, your child, right? So I have a nephew. I know it's not easy. I was just 14 when he was burned, so I had seen that it's tough. So communication is everything. Trust, listening your child without judgment, and kind of like validating their feelings even when our parents don't agree with it. That will help to build trust. That will help for them to come back to you and tell you what's going on, what's wrong, right? So kids needs to feel safe coming to us with their problems. If they're not coming to us with their problem, who they gonna go to? Kids are barely coming to therapists now with their problem because they feel like closure due to, oh, like, I don't want my mom to know this, I don't want my mom to find out, right? So I have seen how like therapeutic, as a therapeutic mentor, I see how like that role that I play has kind of like strength that part of the family, where like, oh, like I can come to my mentor and talk about this, but I cannot come to my therapist and talk about so and so. So it's about communication, kind of like listening without judgment, like I say, and building trust. So we want them to feel safe in an environment. So
You had so many great points there. There's like so much in there. I one thing that really stood out to me that you mentioned was like the modeling and like watching how their parents handle situations. That's so true. You see like if a parent gets really frustrated or upset at something a kid does and they start yelling at the kid, then the kid, when they get frustrated, upset, and start yelling at the person
they
who's
start
making them
yelling.
frustrated or upset, we should not be surprised. That's how
Exactly.
they've learned to handle that situation. And
Mhm.
it is so much more through, like you said, like watching behavior is so much more impactful to kids than telling them what to do.
Telling them what to
Right.
do.
You can't monkey see, monkey do. Like it is
Mhm.
not, you can't separate from a kid. You can't tell them to do something different than what you're doing and expect them to do it. They're going to watch how you handle a situation and mimic that. Which is why sometimes lecturing is, I don't know if you guys have had the conversation with parents, like lecturing a kid when they're pretty young is not, it often isn't as effective as the parent would like, because the words don't matter as much as the behavior does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I hop in really quickly? Because I just kind of want to summarize what we've been talking about so far. So we talked about messaging, reframing, modeling, power dynamics, understanding developmental stages, communication, generational impacts, and just being able to understand behaviors are learned, as well as just the emotion regulation. But I actually have a question, or I actually want parents to know about this. I am the eldest child, and I want parents to understand what parentification is and understand what it feels like sometimes to be the eldest of multiple children.
Correct.
And the oldest child sometimes takes on the, parental role of a mother or a father, but how it also impacts them later on in life. So the perfectionist, or just wanting to get things perfect or get things right the very first time. And I'm also, stationed at a school where I see high achieving eldest siblings, and they have multiple siblings here, but also there is this challenge with being expressive with their emotions because maybe that emotion isn't perfect. So I want parents to know about that, and then also how it might impact where their intention is to maybe praise the eldest. It's okay for the eldest child to make a mistake. I mean, do you all have do you all have any of that with your clients or with your mentees?
Absolutely. I've seen it. Yeah.
Yes. 100% I agree with Miss Danielle. So it's a huge topic, and it's kind of not it's not hard to talk about it, but it's hard to kind of like channel parents into like what is the really the key point to be, not to be like a great parents, because no one is perfect, but just to do it like the right way, right? So I think modeling, communication, and listening are the three key points that I have seen that are, if there's not those three key points in a relationship with your child, then something is missing, something is not balanced. So I have seen that if you're open with your kid, they will be open with you. If you're modeled the right way, they will model. They're like a photocopy machine, right? So that's why PRP, PRP as a therapeutic mentor, their number one goal is every client is modeling. They model your mentor. You want to show them good behavior so they can model you. You want them to be just like you. So that's the whole focus of therapeutic mentor, along with like the social part of it, right? So um I don't know. I wish like parents understood like the importance of connection over perfection, I would say. And kids don't need, how would I say, kids don't need perfect parents. Like I said, they need like present ones, right? Unfortunately, it's happening more and more. High schooler, they're like led on the rail. They don't, parents let them do whatever they want. And it's okay because, they're learning independent living skill. But, if you don't teach them prior, how do you think they're gonna react when you let them go, right? How do you think they're gonna react when you let them do whatever they want, and kind of like, oh, you have to schedule your own appointment, you have to do this. They don't know that because they never learned. There was never a model before it, right? So I think modeling is a healthy way to manage emotion, and listening, again, listening without the judgment go a long way in building the trust. So as a therapeutic mentor, I just want parents to remember that way they respond to their challenge, teach them how to handle life later on. So even if it's up, even if it's down, even if you're going to a crisis, right? It is about creating kind of like a safe, supportive relationship with them in order to grow. And not having all the answer, it's okay. That's why you have a therapist. That's why you have therapeutic mentor. That's why you have doctors, right? Nobody's perfect. So, um, but yeah, it's like a little bit of concern, even more now, because of kids. They're just all over. But I feel like if we're focused more on modeling, listening, and communicating more, I think things can go really well in today's society, even more now. And with all this like technology, you guys, that's another topic, but you
That's a
guys
whole,
already
yeah,
know.
that's a whole
That's a
can of
that's a whole
worms.
different topic, but yeah.
I do want to, one thing that Danielle, you mentioned that I wanted to follow up on before we get more off topic is the, the mistakes, right? Like, it's okay, letting a kid know that it's okay to make mistakes. And Miguel, you mentioned this too, with like, it's okay to make mistakes in parenting. And, it's every single person makes mistakes. No one's perfect. And this does definitely happen to eldest children, have this extra responsibility, expectation on them. But all kids get it. And all parents fall into this trap of like wanting to be perfect. And when you make a mistake, parents either get really down on themselves and they're showing their kids then that it's, making mistakes is bad and that they should be ashamed about it.
Mhm.
Or if a kid makes a mistake, like an honest mistake, and they're getting punished for it, or there are consequences for mistakes. And I'm not talking about intentionally breaking the rules, but I'm talking like a kid's trying to, takes the initiative to feed their pet and spills the dog food all over the floor, and like they, instead of punishing the kid, like lead the kid in what they should do, right? Like they learn how to clean up, but you're praising the fact that like that kid was taking initiative. That kid was trying to like, feed their pet. So focus on what's behind the behavior, what the kid's trying to do, even if there's a mistake happening along the way. That's how kids learn. Kids aren't born with these skills yet. It's going to take them a while to get there.
And then see, that goes back to the original discussion around messaging. That's a great example of a kid trying to take initiative to feed their pet, and they spill the dog food. And, instead of getting angry, a parent can, help them like, okay, you spill the dog food, you have to clean it up. But you know what? Here's a good thing. You took initiative. You wanted to feed your dog. Let's practice that. You can turn that negative experience into a very positive one. So
yeah, a bonding moment, a teaching moment, because that, like Miguel said, that bond is so important.
I mean, oh my gosh, I just wish parents were more close to their kid because it's insane. I don't feel, I don't feel sorry, but that's what we're here for.
I think
And
parents are trying, though. I do think it's really important to acknowledge how much parents are trying.
so yeah, they're trying, and we understand that everything had changed since COVID time, and things just but I feel like if we retrace to what was working before, then we could be in like not on the right page, but like on the right direction.
So everyone, I have a wild card question that I'm going to throw out there. And this was actually submitted by one of our DEIB members. What do you think about behavior charts and emotion charts?
I do use them pretty often because I do work with elementary school age children, and a lot of them do have like behavioral concerns. So I actually do use them quite a lot with the kids. And I know that sometimes I recently had a conversation actually with a parent that they were really hesitant about using behavior chart because they were worried that it would be more of a transactional thing. It would make their relationship more transactional. And that's a perspective that I had never taken into consideration. It was really interesting to hear that perspective because we know that behavior charts work because it's like evidence-based, and when you reward positive behavior, it increases positive behavior. But I never thought about how the parent might be worried that it creates a transactional relationship between parent and child. And what do you guys think about that? Like,
I think it goes back to developmental stages. So for me, when you're dealing with elementary school kids, like, birth to 10, you look at brain development, you look at, you're really just trying to change behaviors at that point. You can't get into the things that you get into with older kids, young adults, because, abstract thought is not in play.
It's not there.
And so for me, behavioral charts, emotional charts, all those kinds of charts, I think work well because it's consistency, it's repetition, it's modeling. And so the fear of it becoming transactional, I think, goes away because it just becomes a part of the kids, daily experience and behavior.
Yeah.
I do think the way that it's done is very important to going to combating that transactional, that possibility that becomes transactional, right? Like the idea behind a behavior chart isn't, you give your kid $5 to do a chore, right? That's not what we're what we're hoping for here. But like Wendy said, the repetition of it, it's giving the parent opportunities to provide positive attention to their kid, which is so, so valuable. I actually wrote down like the biggest thing I wanted to say today is that kids will do anything to get their parents' attention. And if they're not getting it in a positive way, they're gonna get it somewhere else, and
they're gonna get it negative. Yeah.
Yes. Can I say that the phrase is something like any attention is good attention,
Yes.
even if it's like bad attention, right?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another wild card question. Okay.
Wait,
go
can
ahead,
I say
Miguel.
one more thing on behavior charts?
Yeah.
Because behavior charts, they're great if they're done really well in an evidence-based way with a good therapist. But some kids are not appropriate for behavior charts. And so make sure that like if you have a kid that, particularly like if this is a neurodivergent kid, and there are certain behaviors that they're struggling with, not because it is they are intentionally not doing the behavior or because it's like they're forgetting it or something like that, but because they're not yet capable of doing that behavior. A behavior chart isn't going to do anything for that kid. If it's not a choice, if the kid is incapable of doing that thing, and that goes kind of like with what Wendy was saying with developmental expectations, making sure you have appropriate expectations for that kid's age and diagnosis, making sure that, behavior charts, if they have too high expectations on them, your kid's going to feel like a failure. And that's not what the goal is.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Lindsay on that. You got to do it the right way and just be careful the way you do it, because it could go either way. It could either benefit the kid or, not benefit the kid at all. So I used to don't do that a lot. A couple years ago, I don't do them as often. I just use them to build healthy habits more than fixed behavior. What
Like
I
routine
seen,
charts,
huh?
like routine charts, like making, like
Like a
having a routine that you have to check off. I love those.
yes. So I feel those work better. And like I said, like what I seen the most useful is like physically going there, like teaching them how to do it, like modeling. It is all go back to like modeling. If you teach your kid at a younger age how to do the dishes and make it a habit, they will continue to do so. But if they're at that stage where like they don't know, it all goes back to like the starting root. So I feel like that has to, behavior charts, emotional charts, they really good by just the way you got it, deliver it.
And you have to teach them those skills. Like,
And
you mentioned like teaching the kid to do the dishes.
yes,
Often you have to teach a
yes,
kid, you have to
you
break it
had
down
to.
into really small, tiny parts
You,
to teach a kid a new skill. And you have to repeat it a bunch of times.
I'm doing it with high schooler, so
Yeah, a kid is
imagine.
not going to learn it with watching you do it once. They might need a lot of repetition, a lot of assistance to learn new skills, because like this is all very new to them. And so
Exactly. And
that's
you
the
cannot expect them
expectation.
to know them if you never, it's like they could be 60 years old. If you never tell them how they gonna,
How they going to
so
know?
that
Yeah.
how they gonna know. All right.
Lindsay, you bring up a really good point. Before we move on to the last wild card question before we wrap up, when you said something about a neurodivergent child or someone who is within the spectrum of neurodivergence, I think it's really good for our parents to also know that it's not a cookie cutter solution. Like one doesn't fix all. So I think that's a piece of psychoeducation that we really actually want parents to know when it comes to their child either being diagnosed with something along the spectrum of whether it's autism, but they're high functioning, or there's some type of maybe cognitive challenge with understanding or developmental challenge, but they're able-bodied and they're able to do things, but it's the time, it's the patience. And yes, parents, it is repetition. Whereas, we might hear parents back in my day, okay, well, this is a new day. And I think someone mentioned COVID as well. We're in a totally, completely different time. We have to consider social media is an impact as well. There's so many things. I mean, we could even do a part 2 of what we want parents to know. But there's so many things that's been brought up today that are just so great, such good information from our perspectives as, clinicians who want to help parents with children who need to receive services. I do have a last wildcard question, but before I ask it, is there anyone else that wants to comment or, kind of just talk about what we've talked about so far.
I really want the kids will do anything for your attention thing.
Yeah.
I just really wanted to highlight again because I've seen that
Mhm.
so many issues stem from that, from either not getting enough positive attention and praise, or like kids like acting out behaviors. Is like, if you pay attention to the negative stuff that they're doing more than you pay attention to the positive stuff they're doing, they're going to do more negative stuff. And that's just
Right,
like
right,
kids
right,
are
right.
wired to seek our
Right.
attention. Because we're their
Exactly.
lifeline. We're like the most important people in their life until they get, to those like preteen
Mhm.
years when their friends
Right.
become the most important person. But they're going to continue to seek our attention. And if you pay a lot of attention to all the negative stuff they're doing and no attention to the positive, they're not going to keep doing positive things.
I think
And so even just 5 minutes, if you can, 10 minutes a day of like one-on-one time with your kid where you're not doing anything else, but you're playing with them, you're tuned into them. Just like a couple of minutes a day of direct attention can really, really work wonders for a bond between a parent and kid.
Mhm. That's perfect.
Wendy,
Yeah.
you were going to
hugs.
say something?
More hugs.
Hugs.
Yeah, I was just going to highlight, I heard the word a few times from Miguel, but I'm going to highlight safety.
Mhm.
Safety's everything. Emotional safety, meaning you're allowing your kids to make mistakes, but when they make a mistake, they're not being punished in a negative way. You're communicating, as Miguel has highlighted, you're collaborating with them, you're, giving them good messaging, et cetera, et cetera. So that is emotional safety. And then for me, it's just simple physical safety. Like, you want to make sure that your home is a safe place
Right.
for your children and a place for them to, want to come to after a day of school or whatever. And so I think a lot of times we forget having those conversations as clinicians with our parents to get them to understand, what is safety to them and their experience, and why safety is so important for kids, because we work so hard as clinicians and as mentors to create safe spaces for our clients. So I think it goes back and forth. So it's a
Yeah.
really important concept in my eyes.
Yeah, I like to
Yeah.
I like to also establish to parents that my therapeutic space is also a safe space in an emotional sense. And sometimes I will go and explain that even further. Like, when you meet individually, it's a safe space, as in you can talk about whatever you want, and like, there's confidentiality and things like that. But also in a family session, when it's a safe space, that I tell parents that usually that does mean that your child should be allowed to say concerns that they have about you,
Yes. Yes.
without worrying about
That's
what's mom going to say
Repercussions.
after
Yes.
session
Yep.
when I get home. This is something that definitely has happened with my both elementary and teen clients. They don't feel safe in a family session because they're like, well, yeah, I said this, and then my mom said you're lying. And that's
Or
and
you're
I think,
grounded.
or you're grounded, or like, why did you say that? Why did you embarrass us? And I think as therapists, like I actively make sure that the parent understands that we don't get in trouble in this room. This is a safe space. They should be allowed to disagree with you in this space. Yeah.
Because those hard conversations is how you fix things, and how you
Yeah.
create better bonds is through honesty and like honest feedback. And sometimes you have to have a tough conversation to move past something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's really, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna add too. Like, I feel like Gretchen's point about messaging, to me, it's all like behavioral learning. Like, kids receive rewards and punishments for their behaviors, and that's like how they learn. So when they're continuously punished for maybe speaking their truth, or talking about their feelings, even their negative feelings, or showing anger, like I feel like in a lot of traditional households, that's like disrespectful, or why do you feel like that? And all of these things are basically teaching your kids, what's right and what's wrong based on what they're punished and rewarded for. So, like Wendy was saying, like, be careful about, or be like watchful and observant about what you are rewarding them for. Do you give them rewards for good grades, for communicating, for doing things well, for, instead of just punishing them for the negative things? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So actually the wild card question kind of goes into what we've been talking about already. It's the whole fix my child thing.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I'm gonna get on my
Yes,
soapbox. I'm gonna
yes.
get on my soapbox for just a minute, okay? So it's fine that you send your child for individual. It's fine that you send your child for therapeutic mentoring and different things that are activities within the school. But what we've already talked about is that some of the behaviors are modeled. Some of the behaviors
Mhm.
are learned and
Mhm.
derived from
A
either
lot of them.
parenting styles
Mhm.
or lack thereof.
Mhm.
And so this idea of fix my child can't necessarily happen until we either fix the family or mom and dad. Let's work on fixing some things with you. Like, let's just keep it real. And so my question, the wild card question, as we are wrapping up our session, I feel like there should be a part 2 to this, but
There's so
also
much
what therapists
information.
Yeah.
want teachers to know. But
Oh,
that's a whole
yes.
nother
Woo.
that's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day. But I'm
Yeah.
going to throw the question out there. What are your thoughts about the whole fix my child concept?
We all had such a strong reaction when you said those words. So everyone's face was just like, oh,
Yeah.
because we've all heard it.
Yeah.
We've all heard
I
the
mean,
parents that
it's
just
a-
want you to fix their kid.
Yeah, it's a starting point. This is how I view it. It's a starting point because I just think parents don't know better in a sense, not to be, saying it in such a judgmental way, but they just don't. I think parents get to a point where they're just like, they're working, they're feeling like they're doing the best that they can.
They're tired.
And, we've all said on this panel, being a parent is hard. There, as many books have written on the subject matter, it's still very hard. And you
Mhm.
make mistakes. And I think part of that is, parents protecting themselves about, well, I didn't make a mistake, something's wrong with them. And so I'm coming to you all to fix that. And, we know as clinicians, as Danielle just said, well, we have to fix the family. We just can't fix one individual. We have to work on the dynamics around communication and messaging and safety and, all those things. And maybe having, as Lindsay said earlier, tough conversations. Tough conversations can lead to positive change. And so
Mhm.
I just think it's just, it's a safe
Mhm.
starting point for parents when they say, here, fix my kid. We cringe, but, we know what to do and we know what it means. So that's kind of my take on it.
Mm.
Yeah, I
I
think we
was
can
gonna-
even start with like reframing that, like, like fix my child. That's not kid
It's
centered.
not
That's not
broken.
very strength perspective. Instead of fix my child, just understanding that, there's nothing wrong with our kids. They might have some concerning behaviors and some
Mhm.
concerning symptoms that we can always get better at. Just like with anything that we practice, whether it's like sports, whether it's academics, whether it's music, things that we can always get better at. And I think, when we talk to parents about like reframing, we can also remodel for them how they should be reframing how they think about, their children's symptoms that they bring to our office.
I mean, it's
Yes.
always about, which is the hardest concept, I think, is separating the person from the behavior because
Mhm.
it all gets
Yeah.
jumbled. And that's why I think you
Mhm.
get that statement from parents, fix my kid.
You
And,
help
when you
and
delve
support your
into
kid.
that a little bit more, you get to hear like, well, what does that really mean? Personality wise, or are we talking behaviors? Like, what does it mean? And I like what you said, Nikki, that, we can, you know, at the moment help reframe what that is and model that. Like, let's say something in a different way,
Yeah.
because I like to separate the person from the behavior.
Mhm.
It breaks my heart when little 4 or 5-year-olds say, I'm a bad person. Because then I always
Yes.
tell parents, your child's not a bad child. They just make bad choices. And I
Yes.
always say that, and I always reframe it because I think, for us, when we say like, oh, I was bad, I know that I'm talking about my choices, but kids are very literal. They take things in a very literal way. So
Yeah.
when you tell a kid you were bad, they don't think about their behavior. They think about themselves as a human being, like, oh my God, I am a bad person. When
Mhm.
it's more about the bad choices,
Exactly.
bad decisions, and not you as a person. So I think, Wendy, you're like absolutely right.
Mhm.
And even like to further that, like sometimes I feel like a lot of the things that I see is like I'm unworthy of love, kind of, you know. My my parent responds to me in a negative way when I do this. Do they not love me anymore? You know,
Right.
because I'm a bad kid, do I not deserve for them to love me anymore? And then it's like, okay, once that comes into the picture, I feel like, of course, negative behavior starts to act up. You know, they feel like their parent doesn't love me because they take things so literal. And
Mhm.
I think my original reaction to like the fix my child comment was that, especially with like younger kids, I feel like all parents should realize how much of children's behavior is learned, right? And modeling, like we've been saying, right? It's just like a mirror. Your child is a mirror of you. Your child is a sponge of their environment. So yeah, maybe they're learning things from the babysitter or from school, right? But a lot of it is from what's happening at home and a lot of what they've seen from their parents. So if you feel the need to fix your child and you know you have some inherent belief that maybe something is wrong with them, maybe you need to self-reflect a little bit and think about, where am I, you know, where am I missing the mark? What in which ways am I like teaching them that this is the correct way to act? Because in a lot of it, they are just, you know, learning it from them. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be unintentional. And I think it goes back to a comment that you said a while ago, Brie, about like the power dynamics and the authority and like that feeling that parents feel like they can't make mistakes and they can never admit a mistake to their kid.
Exactly.
I think there's
Yeah.
nothing more powerful than a
Mhm.
parent admitting to their kid that they've made a mistake and then correcting it, because you're showing your child how to admit their mistakes, take responsibility, and correct and move forward. That is such
Accountability.
a valuable skill. And it's okay for a parent, like they come in like, you know, their kid has concerning behaviors. We do some family sessions, we do some family work. It comes to light that there's something that the family can do together or the parents can do to help this kid move through this behavior. Then like use that opportunity. That's an amazing opportunity for you as a parent to show your kid how it's okay to say you're wrong and change your behavior to do something better when you have new information. That's a skill that I think some adults struggle with, is recognizing when they've done something wrong and then being able to accept new information and change and do better later. It's really, really powerful when parents can do that. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's not saying that you're being a bad parent. It's a sign of strength that you can admit that you can change something.
Yeah. And I feel like for a lot of parents who like struggle with that, it's also like from what they saw, you know, growing up. And it's like, yeah, you probably had a parent who also didn't know all this stuff, you know, and who probably thought that they had to like hold on to their power and authority very strongly. And you know, a lot of it is not your fault, because this is, you know, we see these messages so much about the power and authority and the respect, and my child has to fear me, you know, and like maybe you are taught by like your environment too that your behavior defines you, you know, or your behavior makes you a bad person. And it's like, it's not necessarily your fault, but also as a parent, it's your responsibility to do the best that you can, you know, to help your kid out. And like, I feel like everybody wins if you sometimes self-reflect to see like, okay, what's going on with me? What's going on with my kid? What is a connection and what can we do better, both of us?
Yeah.
Everyone can always do better.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's okay.
Absolutely. Listen, this needs to be a part 2 because we could go on and on and on. What I'm going to ask everyone to do, 30 seconds or less, if you can give, not Wendy, not me, but our clinicians, our illustrious panel here today, if you could give just a point of either advice or resources for our parents, maybe even students and lay people that are watching this episode today, what would it be? We'll start with Lindsay, then Nikki, Bree, and then we'll end with Miguel.
Okay. This is kind of a perspective thing that we've like talked about like tangentially a couple of times, but you know, a parent realizing that like they are on a team with their kid, you are partnering with your kid, you're preparing your kid for life, and the world is going to be a challenging place. Like I know I hear a lot of parents say that like I've got to prepare my kid for the world, so I'm giving them tough love. The world is going to give your kid tough love. The world is going to challenge your kid and beat them down. And you are the place that they can go to. You're their safe place. You are the place that they can go to for support and help and assistance. They're going to get the tough love outside the house. The world's hard. You can be the place. You can be the person that's leading them with confidence and showing them how to tackle those hard parts of the world. But from a perspective of like you're a team together. You're not trying to be the person to show them that the world is hard. You're the person who's there for them to rely on when the world is hard. So take that image of you being like a supportive person on their team, leading them into their life, showing them these skills. And I think that's a really important perspective for parents to remember.
So good. Nikki.
When it comes to helping children, shape their behavior into more positive behaviors, a lot of times we make behavior charts, and we always remind parents that, behavior does not change overnight. Behavior does take time, and behavior takes practice. And a lot of times parents, on top of that, they might also beat themselves up for not getting the behavior chart done perfectly all the time. And I always want parents to know that in the same way that your child's behavior is going to take time and it's going to take practice, your behavior, your adjustment to this change, to this parenting change, it's also something that you have to practice. So I want you to give yourself the grace and the patience as you adjust to the change in the behavior, in the way that you interact with your child as well. And don't give up if you make the mistake one time.
Yes.
It's a behavioral change. It's an adjustment for your child, but it's also an adjustment for you.
Yeah.
That's so valuable.
Yes. Grace, patience, adjustment. Bree.
I think the takeaways for the parents I want them to have is to look within, to maybe think about how much your child is like a mirror of you or your partner in any ways. What environments are they in that are, like teaching them those behaviors, and also to remember to share the power, that it doesn't have to be such a heavy load to carry for the parent alone to make all the decisions, and you can include your child in your decisions. And even if you aren't giving them full control, to make them feel like they have some control and some power can make a really big difference in them feeling part of the team and part of controlling what's going on at home, instead of just being subordinate to this, power source that they're at will to. Yeah, it's a team. It's a team being, a parent. So
yes.
Remember that. Yeah.
Yes, power, partnership, teamwork. All right, Miguel.
I mean, as a therapeutic mentor, if there's something that I want parents to take away, it's just to, we know being a parent is tough, it's hard. We understand that. But at the heart of it, being a parent is, creating a safe, supportive space where your child can grow, explore, and learn, basically. So the little things goes along the way, and that include like listening, being consistent, and obviously showing compassion, right? It makes a big difference in shaping their resilience and emotional health. So I feel just communication and being consistent and modeling and trying your best could be just fine. And then, yeah.
Okay, so safe, supportive spaces and compassion. And I actually want to, before I turn this over to Wendy, I did write down a quote. I believe it was Miguel who said it. Kids don't need a perfect parent. They need a present parent. I really like that. So Wendy, before we go, what are your thoughts? And then I'm going to close it out.
I mean, this is a great conversation, and definitely we can part two it so many different ways. I mean, it's a lot of information, and I think hopefully parents can digest what we said, because we're really here to help the children and the parents and the entire family. So there's a lot of great takeaways that everybody talked about. I really love what Lindsay said about, let's just abandon that notion of tough love. The world is tough.
Yeah.
And kids will feel it, but they need that safe space to land. And that safe space should be at home with their parents and get that support. Everybody talked about support. Bree really talked about self-reflection. Like, let's just look in the mirror for a minute and see how we might be as parents contributing to the issues that are going on with our child. And, Nikki said, but have some grace with that. Like, nobody's perfect. As Miguel said, nobody's perfect as parents. It's a hard, hard job. But when you're open to, changing your thoughts about it and trying different skills, it can't do anything but great for the child. And
Yep.
so I think, this is a great conversation. I think we brought up really good points for parents. And, I know all of us will continue to use that information in our sessions with our families to help affect change. So, bravo, everyone. This is really a great conversation. Danielle?
Yes, this was amazing. Thank you, Lindsay, Nikki, Bree. Thank you, Miguel. This is making a difference in mental health. Listen, I want you to like, comment, share, subscribe. This was an amazing episode, and we want to do part 2, part 3, and part 4 even. But this is making a difference in mental health. We're always striving to make a difference in mental health. We'll see you next time.